the first country to have its homegrown revolution after the Russian Revolution in China, so-called Communist China, War Communist China. Mao Zedong, the famous Chairman Mao, rises up, kicks out the Western-backed capitalist leader, Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek and his so-called nationalist Chinese, capitalist Chinese, they have to leave China. They flee across a body of water called the Straits of Formosa. They go and take over the island of Taiwan, where generally their sympathizers are still in control today. I believe the main airport in Taiwan is Chiang Kai-shek International Airport. Still a lot of tension between the two, Chiang Kai-shek and the communists on the mainland. But actually the Chinese Communist Revolution begins several decades earlier. As early as 1927, Mao tries to kick out Chiang Kai-shek, take over China, make it Soviet China. But in 1927, Mao is unsuccessful. Chiang Kai-shek wins. After all, 1927, Mao cannot get much help from his communist big brother in Russia. Back in 1927, Russia still kind of a long ways away from China. And 1927, Russia still in the very early stages of its own industrial development, revolutionary development. After all, World War I doesn't end until 1918. 9 years earlier. The capitalists don't retreat from their invasion of Russia until 1920, 7 years earlier. So not much help Mao can get from his communist big brother in Russia. Chiang, on the other hand, he gets lots of help from the European colonialists. He's their puppet. He allows the Europeans in to exploit China, and of course the Europeans are getting very rich exploiting China. They're making Chiang very wealthy for allowing them in to exploit China, and so the European colonialists want to make sure Chiang wins so they can continue to get rich exploiting China. The European colonialists give Chiang lots of support, money, soldiers, weapons. 1927, Chiang wins, Mao loses. Mao and his communists retreat, go on what is famously called the Long March, retreat deep into the interior of China, try to escape the pursuing soldiers of the army of the capitalist Chiang Kai-shek, while Mao is hiding in the mountains in the interior of China. 1930s, Japan invades China, start of World War II in Asia, before the start of World War II in Europe. Japan trying to fulfill its goal of making China a colony of Japan, falls to Chiang Kai-shek to try to meet and defeat the invading Japanese. After all, Chiang Kai-shek is the president, it's his country, it's his army. He has to send his army to try to fight the Japanese. No way Chiang can do this. The Japanese are much too powerful. We had a hard enough time with the Japanese ourselves in the Pacific. Chiang's army is smashed. Japan has now fulfilled its goal, made China a colony of Japan. You know your history of World War II. Virtually all of Asia becomes a colony of Japan. And it remains that way until that remarkable day in 1945 when the United States drops the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Oh, one wasn't enough for you. Here, have another one on Nagasaki. Just like that, World War II in Asia is over. Mao can see there's no one in control of mainland China. No modern army in mainland China. Chiang's army has been smashed by the Japanese, We blow the Japanese away in a nuclear instant, no major army taking control of mainland China. Mao sees his opportunity, sweeps out of the mountains with his rested communist soldiers, kicks out Chiang Kai-shek, takes over mainland China for the communist Chinese, and part of the reason that Mao was able to rally the Chinese people for such a long march, 1927 until after World War II, part of the deep background of Western exploitation of China, the Opium Wars fought around 1840, 1850, the British taking opium from the Golden Triangle region, I believe in Southeast Asia, putting opium on British boats, sailing those boats around to China, and using the mighty British Navy to force the Chinese to allow the British to unload the opium and open up not candy stores, but opium stores in the main streets of the main cities of China, sell opium to the Chinese people. Opium, in case I need to point out, is a highly addictive drug made into heroin, made into morphine, and as any good drug pusher will tell you, and through my years of teaching, I don't think I ever once failed to have at least one good drug pusher in every class. When you start selling a highly addictive drug like opium, heroin, morphine, what's the price in the beginning? Free! First one's free. Get them to like it, get them addicted to it, then they have to pay any price that you ask. The Chinese leaders were horrified. They saw the British as the drug thugs of the 1800s. The drug thugs, of course, the name we use today for the marijuana and cocaine cartels from Colombia and from Mexico. As far as the Chinese were concerned, it was the British who were the drug thugs of the 1800s, selling opium to the Chinese people. And the Emperor of China writes a very famous letter to Queen Victoria, moral advice to Queen Victoria, protesting about the opium trade, the British forcing the Chinese to allow the sale of opium. The Chinese emperor says to the British Queen, "After a long period of commercial intercourse, there appears among the crowd of barbarians," that's the way the Chinese referred to the British, the crowd of barbarians, "both good persons and bad, unevenly more bad people than good. Consequently, there are those who smuggle opium to seduce the Chinese people, and so cause the spread of this poison to all provinces. Such persons, who only care to profit themselves and disregard their harm to others, are not tolerated by the laws of heaven, and are unanimously hated by all human beings. Suppose there were people from another country who carried opium for sale to England and seduced your people into buying and smoking it, certainly your honorable ruler would deeply hate it and be bitterly aroused. We have heard that your honorable ruler is kind and benevolent. Naturally, you would not wish to give unto others what you yourself do not want." Wonder where he got that line from, the sneaky Chinese. But that's exactly what the British were doing, selling opium to the Chinese people, get them addicted to the drug. And it was only the British who did this, by the way. It wasn't us Americans, it wasn't the Germans, it wasn't the French, it was just the British. But I'm not really sure your average Chinese can tell the difference between a citizen of Germany, a citizen of France, a citizen of England, a citizen of the United States. After all, it's just all of these white-skinned people speaking what to them sounds like gobbledygook. I know when my wife from Thailand is on the telephone with her girlfriends, can I tell when she's speaking Thai to one of her Thai girlfriends, or Laotian to one of her Laotian girlfriends, or Chinese to one of her Chinese girlfriends? It's just this brown-faced lady speaking what to my ear sounds like gobbledygook. I figured to the Chinese, It's the same thing, just all of these white-faced people speaking what sounds like gobbledygook. It's pretty easy then for Mao Zedong to tar Chiang Kai-shek with the brush. This is the guy who is supported by the British. This is the guy who is supported by the drug pushers. Want a guy who's supported by drug pushers running your country? And our policy towards China around the turn of the 20th century, the open door policy, sure has a nice sounding name, better than the door slammed in your face policy. What the truth of the open door policy was, China around the end of the 1800s was divided by the European colonialists into spheres of influence, sometimes called compartments or concessions. Say the leader of China conceded a part of China to the British. The British then could exploit that part of China, give a kickback, of course, to the Emperor of China. The French would be conceded control of another part of China, and so they could exploit that part of China, get rich, give a kickback, of course, to the Emperor, Portugal, Spain, and so forth, the Dutch. We did not have any part of China to exploit. We, like the Germans, get to the game of colonialism late. Before we can think of exploiting China, first we have to fulfill our manifest destiny, spread from sea to shining sea, slaughter the Indians, for which we still give thanks. Thanks for giving, sucker. Steal the Southwest from the Mexicans, take Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines from the Spanish in the Spanish-American War, kill any Filipino who thinks they should have the right to independence. Then we look at China. No room for us to exploit China. China has already been carved up like a big turkey bird among the European colonialists. So we propose the open door policy, saying in effect, let's erase all of these artificial boundaries drawn by European colonialists and let the door be open for anybody to exploit any part of China. If the British want to go and exploit somewhere where the Dutch were in control, the Dutch should open the door and let the British in. If the French want to go and exploit where only the Spanish were, the Spanish should open the door, the Germans should open the door, everybody should open the door. The main thing then, the door would be open for the United States to go in and exploit China. So I have always thought, for purposes of truth and advertising, this should have been called the open exploitation policy, not the open door policy. But then Mao Zedong rallies the Chinese people against Chiang Kai-shek. This is the guy supported by the drug pushers. This is the guy supported by the exploiters, rallies the Chinese people, kicks Chiang Kai-shek out of China, takes control of China. And so the timeline here, before the 1930s, the Europeans are in control of China. China is a colony of the Europeans. Europeans party in China. China pays for the party. Then 1930s, Japan invades China, kicks the European colonialists out. China becomes a colony of Japan. Japan exploits China. Japan parties in China. China pays for the party. Then 1945, we blow Japan away in a nuclear instant. Nobody in control of mainland China. Mao seizes opportunity, sweeps out of the mountains, kicks out Chiang Kai-shek. Immediately, of course, forms a war communist government. We're going to make war on China any chance that we get. First, one person in control, Mao himself, of course, until he dies in the 1970s, a very vigorous old man. Now, of course, it's President Xi, president for life, one person in control, all resources to the military. Traditionally, China's people very poor. Their military, of course, growing into one of the world's large monsters. And today, of course, China has nuclear weapons. They're a nuclear power, so they don't have to worry so much about our attacking them. They've tried to focus also on developing their domestic consumer economy. And, of course, they are growing extremely wealthy. This cover of The Economist magazine back in 2010, buying up the world, picture of Mao Zedong with all of his $100 bills. And China having a very substantial middle class, although the ethic in China, if you've got it, don't flaunt it. If you've got it, don't flaunt it, unlike the American ethic. If you've got it, flaunt it, baby. Rub it in everybody's face. Show them how much better you are than they are. Not so much in China. A little bit of the communist ethic here going in with the socialism. Okay, you started a business. That was great. Your business was successful. It expanded. That's wonderful. You gave people jobs. You're a job creator. You lifted some of your countrymen out of unemployment and poverty and hunger. That's wonderful. China has had such problems with unemployment, poverty, and hunger. You started a business. It expanded. It was successful. You gave people jobs. That's wonderful. You think you deserve a few $1 million as a reward? I don't see whether there's any harm in that. Build yourself a nice house on the beach. Put a nice deck on the roof of the house. Eat good food. Drink good beverage. You gave people jobs. You helped them out of poverty. You deserve it. But don't go rubbing it in their face, trying to show them that you're better than they are just because you have more money than they do. A little bit of the communist ethic. Recognize there's some luck in this. You were lucky to be born healthy. You were lucky to be born intelligent. Lucky to be born in a country that allows you to do these things. And, of course, no freedom of speech for the Chinese people, still censoring the internet. They're afraid if they open up China to that kind of communications freedom, the big Western media corporations will go in, buy up their access to information, brainwash the Chinese people, try to get capitalism reinstalled in China. But now, 1950s, the communists control the world's biggest country, Russia. Now the communists control the world's most populated country, China. Revolution breaking out in Vietnam, revolution breaking out in Korea, revolution's going to be breaking out in Cuba and Central America. If the capitalist Lloyd George was nervous back in 1917 about Soviet socialism infecting British workers, how do the capitalists feel in the early 1950s? They're absolutely terrified. Communists everywhere. They're taking over everything. The stage is set for the red hysteria of the early 1950s, the McCarthy period. See the George Clooney movie, Good Night and Good Luck. Also, by the way, the famous movie, The Front. But I found this in a Mad magazine. I've had this since I was 12 years old, so this would be 1963. I got this, dare I confess, in a Hebrew school class. We had a contest and I won this because I could say the names of the tribes of Israel faster than anybody else in class. Even back then I had this talent, and so I had a choice. As I recall, I could have 50 cents cash or a Mad magazine. I knew a Mad magazine was worth a lot more than 50 cents cash. I found this song in it that I can use to this day to try to give you some idea what the red hysteria was like. The song is called the Birch Hymn of the Republic, sung to the tune of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I'm not sure if you've heard of the John Birch Society, a very conservative anti-communist organization. John Birch was the name of the first American that was killed by the communists when they took over China. Mine eyes have seen the horror of the coming of the Reds. They are tearing up Old Glory into 60 million shreds. They are standing in our closets. They are hiding neath our beds. Let's fight until they're gone. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Don't let the commies here subdue ya. Let's fight until they're gone. They are peeking through my window late at night when I watch Par. I have seen them in the glove compartment of my family car. They are hiding in the treetops. They control the DAR. Let's fight until they're gone. They are running through my kitchen, and that really makes me mad. I have counted 4 this morning. That's including Mom and Dad. They will soon take over Pittsburgh and rename it Stalingrad. Let's fight until they're gone. I have seen them in the cages of the Park Menagerie. I've learned that all but one are in the Birch Society. Right now I'm in the process of investigating me. Let's fight until they're gone. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Don't let the commies here subdue you. The Anti-Communist Hysteria, Cold War period, 1960s, Mad magazine.